Hi, welcome to Inkscape for Teachers. I'm Geoff Phillips, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to create this detailed tan graph. There are certain difficulties, I guess, drawing tan graphs, even with some graphing software, whether the asymptotes are drawn or whether the software attempts to join the point before the asymptote to the point after, and you get these silly lines joined. But let's see how we do it in Inkscape. So I'll start a new document, File, New, and then I will turn on the grid by going View, Page Grid, and I'll control mouse wheel to zoom in a bit, and then mouse wheel down and drag, and there's my page. Now I'm going to create a grid based on an 8x4 rectangle, 1, 2, 3, that looks right. To use the function plotter in Inkscape, you need to select a rectangle first. You can see that rectangle is selected. Now if I go to Extensions, Render, and down to Function Plotter, you can see I've been doing a cos graph before, but I'm going to change the starting x value to minus 1.6, which is roughly negative pi on 2, and 1.6 positive end x value. I'm going to make it, because tan graphs get large pretty quickly, I'll make that from negative 10 to 10. I'll leave the number of points plotted at 300. I'll change this to tan, and I'll draw the axes. Well, I'll probably put a tick in there to start with, but you don't have to do that because you can usually guess where, well, not guess, but determine where the axes go in the middle of the graph anyway. Now if I do a live preview, I might see behind here, there's a tan graph. Now, what is a bit of a problem is this continuing way past there. I can clip with the rectangle, but I don't like using clips there, they can cause other problems. I might just try and reduce the range to 1.5 here and see what happens. And click another box, and that looks a bit more manageable, doesn't go too far. Look, I could even try 1.4, but let's have a look. Yep, look, I'll give that a go. Apply and close, and if I click on this and go, I don't want the rectangle around the outside anymore, so I'll go Path, Break Apart, and if I then click on the rectangle and delete, there's my tan graph. Now that's a bit shorter than I'd wanted, but I can extend that by dragging up in that direction, and there's a reasonable tan graph. Actually I haven't done the other end. I'll drag it down there so you can manipulate the size. That looks pretty good. If I zoom in though, you'll see that, gee, there's a few wobbles there, which is the way that and even a little gap there, it's a bit strange. It's a bit bumpy. Probably wouldn't notice and it'd be okay on a worksheet because that's even 140%, and that's you can't really see. Although these dashes, I'm not sure whether they'd print or not. But to get rid of those bumps, I'll show you, there the bumps there. Select the graph. You can see that I have selected it, yep. I'm zooming back out, back in. Under Extensions, Modify Path, Flatten Beziers. I find 10 a good setting, apply that, and bingo, we've got a nice sharp graph again, and you can even see down here there are no gaps. So there's how to get the basic tan graph. Now what I'm going to do is extend this. This is going from perhaps negative pi on 2 to pi on 2. The problem is that there would be an asymptote on this grid line, and the tan graph doesn't actually reach the asymptote, but we'll deal with that in a minute. If I click on the graph itself, Control D and duplicate, drag it along once there, Control D and do another one. I've got my snapping tools on here so that things snap correctly. Control D, I'll drag one back this way, and Control D, drag one back that way. So I've got quite a few tan graphs. I'll extend this axis perhaps out to there and perhaps back to here. Now I can put arrows on them. I might do that in a minute. Actually, let's do it now. Control Shift to select both axes. I'm going to find the fill and stroke menu. It's down here. Control Shift F if you need to bring it up again from scratch. Stroke style, and change that to 0.5. And on the end, let's go for say this arrow. And there's some nicer axes. I'll shift click to select all the parts of the tan graph, and I'll bump them up to say 0.7, I think I found was good before, and shift click a colour to change the stroke to red. Now that almost looks right, except of course, as I said before, the asymptotes wouldn't touch the tan graph. So what I'm going to do is I'll shift click all of these to select them all. And this is a nice trick. Under Transform over here, again Control Shift M, think of M for move being one of the transforms. And I'm going to scale, but only the horizontal. Let's change it to, let's try 90%. And make sure Apply to each object separately is ticked. We don't want proportional, we just want the widths shrunk a bit. If I apply that, you can see that the graphs have moved a bit away from where the asymptote would be, which is what I want. So now I'll put the asymptotes in, B for the Bezier pen tool, and I'm snapping to grid, click, click and enter. I might change that to the 0.5 stroke width of before. And under the dashes, I'll select a fairly wide dash down here. If I click the selection tool just to click away, that doesn't look too bad. If I click on that asymptote, Control D, and drag it into position, you can see they're looking pretty good because the graphs don't approach it. Actually, I'm going to delete that last one, because if this was pi on 2, this would be pi, 3 pi on 2, 2 pi. I might want to stop my graph here at 2 pi. So I'll zoom in, click on that arm of the graph and N for the node tool, and you can see there are lots of nodes there, but what I probably should have done is simplified that. So what I'll do is I'll shift click all the red graphs. There are lots of points there, I don't need all of those, and if I go Control L, that simplifies the number of points. If I now click N, you see there are only a few points there without affecting the tan graph. Now if I, with the node tool selected, you can get it up here, or as I said before, N. I'm going to double click on that point there, and that inserts a point. Now I'm going to break the graph at that point, which is this icon here, but doesn't actually break it yet. Bit annoying, but you have to go to Path, Break Apart to force that. Then the selection tool, and if I click, say, this bit up here and delete, then that's gone. I'll repeat the process over here, N for the node tool, click this graph, part of the graph, double click there to insert a point, break it apart there, Path, Break Apart, back to the selection tool, don't delete yet, you only want to delete one part, which is this part, and press delete, and there we go. One other thing I noticed is that these are rectangular breaks. You might like to, and I probably should have done this before, because now I've got to select them all, shift click, or control shift click. You can use control to select within a group, so just shift will do now, but if they were grouped you could control just to select that part of the group. Shift click there, and this rounded end here, if I do that, then if you zoom in, you see it looks a bit neater, I think. So there's a pretty good tan graph. I'm just going to go back here, I don't need the axes all the way there, and perhaps back to there. And I can label the parts on the graph using the text tool or whatever. I'll just get rid of the grid, I think that's in the way at the moment, unless you want to go over the grid with other lines. Sometimes you want a grid there. But let's just go to view page grid and take that off, and I'll use the text tool, T for text tool, and click. And to get pi, I use the Unicodes, and there are a table of these that I can provide, or you can Google them. Just Google Unicode for pi or whatever. And to activate a Unicode in Inkscape, it's Control U, and then 00C. No, it isn't. I'll escape that. Start again. Control U, 03C0 is the pi code, I think. Press enter, and there it is. Now I'll Control D to duplicate that. Text T for text tool and change that into, say, a 2, pi and 2. The 2 looks a bit big compared to the pi, so I'm using 11 point times New Roman, so maybe the pi, if I click T for text tool, highlight it. We don't have to highlight it as long as it's in that text box. Change it to 12 point. It looks a slightly bit better. F1 select tool, and I need a line between there. I like to use a Unicode minus sign for my line infractions. So T for text tool, I'll just click over here, Control U, 2212, and enter is the minus sign. But I like using that for a fraction divider because it's easy to change the colour of as an object when I select all the objects in this group. I'll show you in a minute. I'll just drag that a bit bigger, and if I select all of those, and if I don't want to change the colour, but I'll show you what I mean from that comment before. If I click on that, they're all changed. If you did the line as a stroke, it wouldn't have changed because I'm changing the fill. Anyway, I'll Control Z back to that, and under Align and Distribute, I'm going to line them up centrally, and I'm going to distribute them equally vertically. Now Control G to group it, and there's my pi on 2, so I might drag that up to there. Now I can continue to drag that. Click it, Control D to duplicate, and perhaps drag to there. Same over here. I tend to put them on what I call the fat side, where there's more space from the graph. Control D, so there's more space there rather than trying to cram it in here. And look, I won't do the whole graph because it'll take too much time, but I'll just show you how I got the pi. If I Control click on that and delete, Control click on that, delete, there's my pi. T for text tool to put a 3 in here. It's a bit big, remember it was 11 before, so I'll change that down, and I'll drag that across a bit. Zoom in, Control click this minus sign and move it perhaps to there, extend it, and I'll ungroup. I've clicked on the whole group there. I'll Control U to ungroup, then I'll line them up, then I'll regroup, Control G, and so forth. Over here this should be a 2 pi. I'll put the 2 in, highlight it, change it back to 11 point, and Control click those 2 little bits there and delete. And you can see I've started to build up my axis division labels. I could put an X and a Y in there, but I'll just flick back to, I think you've got the idea, flick back to the original document. You can see that there's a completed one. There's a similar method for creating sine and cos. I'll just show you up here. There's the cos and sine. I might show you that in another video. But until then, once again, thanks for watching.